Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. The webinar will begin in just a moment. In the meantime, if you want to tell us where you're connecting from, that's always fun to see where people are from. So, should be a good idea if I actually put my chat on so that I can see where everybody's from. Toronto, awesome. Kingston, look now, Regina, Exeter, Fredericton. Cool. Welcome. So we're just going to give it a few more seconds and give everybody a chance to connect, and then we'll get started. Okay, yeah. Wingham, welcome. Allenford, Trent Lakes, Montreal, welcome. We're actually north of Montreal in Laval. All right, I think we're going to get going. So thanks for joining us for our MicroAge Talks Technology webinar. Today's webinar will focus on answering the question we are hearing more and more from our clients, and that is, how do we start with the AI journey? The answer to that question lies in the governance and security of your data. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Maria Fiore. I'm the Director of Operations here at MicroAge, and joining me today is Sergio Lima, Director of Customer Success. Welcome, Sergio.
Hello, Maria. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Attendees are on mute and to reduce the background noise, and I'm sure you've already noticed that. We encourage questions, please, because Sergio loves to answer questions.
Yep.
So please either put it in the chat or use the Q&A to ask your questions. We love the interactivity between you and us and each other, and it's key to the success of our webinars. So please use the chat to share your thoughts throughout the webinar. Also, this webinar is being recorded. If all goes well, the link to the recording will be sent to everyone in the next 24 hours. In the same email, you will receive a link to download the free ebook we created, and we encourage you to take advantage of the resources that we're making available and share the links with your colleagues that may benefit from today's information. Lastly, at the end of the webinar, we have a short 3-question survey to gather your feedback. Please take a moment to share your feedback with us so we can improve future webinars. Just as an example, the AI webinars we presented, as well as the one that we're doing today, are direct result of the responses we received from these surveys. So thank you to all of who have shared their feedback with us. We appreciate it. Before Sergio takes the helm here, I'm going to take a moment to give a brief overview of who we are, for those of you who may not know who MicroAge is. We are a Canadian technology service provider with 41 locations across Canada. This year, we're proudly celebrating our 45th anniversary. That's 45 years of providing IT services and solutions to our clients. Our belief is that creating strong partnerships with our clients allows us to help you achieve the objectives that you want to achieve. What do we mean by strong partnerships? We mean understanding your operations, who your clients are, how your people work, your challenges, your opportunities, your success metrics, your future plans. Understanding your organization helps us recommend and provide the IT services and solutions that helps you get to the to your definition of success. So this is who we are and how we engage with our clients. And with that, I'm going to pass the floor to you, Sergio.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, and welcome to everyone. I hope you have your construction hats ready because we're going to get our hands dirty. This is going to be fun. We're going to look at, if you've listened to the previous webinars, all of that was, with regards to AI and being ready. This is the part 4, I believe, that
Yes.
leads to how can we implement governance within our network, specifically in this case would be for Copilot. But to be honest, the foundation behind all of this is regardless of whatever AI tool that you wish to implement, the base of all AI tools is the ability to go in and collect and Canvas and grab that data that is accessible within your M365 tenant, and then facilitate, give you efficiency, give you productivity. But unfortunately, there are environments that are still open. There's not enough guardrails. You may not necessarily want specific information available to all of your people, all of your employees, or external companies, partners, and clients. So the goal of this webinar is really to look at sort of the baseline security policies that you should have in place. And if I were to erase the word Copilot or AI, it's essentially the baseline security policies that you should have within your environment, irrelevant of if you wish to implement any kind of AI. So we've been preaching this for many years. You'll notice there's a few items that'll come up that are just, the basic requirements that have been in your probably in your face for a while, either by cybersecurity insurers or by partners and clients that are requiring that of you, or your IT firm or microage saying, look, this is what we need to put in place to help you be a bit more secure with your environment.
Reduce risk, right?
Yeah, reduce your risk. And fortunately, it is the same standard that must be applied for when implementing AI tools. So yes, it's, in this case, it's with regards to Copilot and any AI tool, but it is something that you must have within your environment. So we'll go through a few of those things, the way the M365 data is accessed and the visibility, the permissions that you have existing and what should be sharing control. We'll look at the Microsoft options that are available, such as Purview and DLP, which is data loss prevention. So the ability to contain and monitor and make sure that data is manipulated properly by your employees or by any AI tool. And we'll give you some practical rollout best practices and some examples of that. So why does governance matter before Copilot? As I mentioned, it's pretty much if you think you're okay and then you start to implement Copilot, then you'll realize that it'll just amplify and put that little magnifying glass on things that you thought were secure, or permissions were kind of constrained, but they're not. The only thing that it'll do is it won't invent stuff. So it'll actually go into your data and pretty much map out your vulnerabilities and your loopholes and stuff that needs to be controlled. So it's powerful because it works across all your data. It leverages the permissions that are already in place. But obviously, you may not be aware that you have access to certain data, but Copilot has the ability to go in and take a look and go across the board and actually come back to you with information that maybe you shouldn't be having. Right. So the issue is not really Copilot, but it's the back end, right? So the quality of your controls, the visibility, the policies that you've put in place that you're enforcing to ensure that Copilot or any AI tool is giving you what you've asked of it and not anything more. So the governed foundation obviously lets you move faster without creating those hidden security and compliance debt. We'll start with a nice little question, a little poll. So we'll ask you, how confident are you that the current permissions that are already there reflect what the users should be able to find? So obviously are you very confident about your access and your sharing controls and that they're already mature? Are you somewhat confident? You're kind of secure, but not at 100%. You think there's some gaps. Are you low on the confidence scale? You've grown organically and then realized that maybe there's some corrective measures that need to be put in place, or you're not sure. Maybe you don't have any kind of visibility and you're not sure of what's going on. So, we ask this question because once Copilot comes into play, it will respect the existing permissions, but it also leverages any kind of legacy access that you have in place. Again, it'll open up your eyes to specific data that maybe you did not want to have available to some or all of your employees. So we'll ask that question and wait for a response.
So yeah, so we have about a good amount of responses right now, and we're tracking to 54% who say they're somewhat confident, but they know that they have gaps. We have 20% that are low confidence. Access has grown organically over time, so they're not as confident. And then we have about 8% who are saying they're not sure, and 12% that said that they're very confident. So congratulations to the 12%.
All right.
Sergio and I we're talking about this, right? And so what do you see in the client base, like when you go and do these things? Does it reflect pretty much what the survey says, or?
It's actually in line with the conversations we have, the discussions, and the comments that we get when we ask that question with our customers. A lot of them say, yes, I'm somewhat confident. I know there's probably some corrections, and let's go through it and see where we can make some corrections. But to be honest, the a lot of times we walk into environments where clients think they're somewhat confident, and then we realize we run our report or assessment, and then there's a whole slew of recommendations and corrective measures that need to be put. So it's kind of hard to see with no visibility. It's very difficult for anyone to really say whether they're good or not good in that environment. Like, we are a perfect example of that. Our location decided to go into an AI readiness assessment, ourselves being IT, and we're in very confident, right? We're access to sharing controls, we're very mature, we're in IT. And even at that point, we realized that, what, maybe we should have gone in with somewhat confident, because we saw a couple of things that needed correction. So it's that whole data governance, the compliance, the security of your tenant is a completely different ball game versus the standard typical rights and access and permissions that you give to your users in terms of files and data access. So it's interesting exercise.
Yeah,
Opens up
yeah.
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't realize, most organizations are 5, 10, 15 years old, 20 years old, or whatever it is. There's a lot of
Yeah.
baggage, right? And there's things you forget that you did, 15 years ago or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's not an unusual thing, right?
Yep. That's right. All right, so let's do it. So what Copilot can see depends on what users can already reach, right? So let's look at the common data sources. Implementing Copilot will give you access to emails, calendar content, typical content that your users already have permissions to access. Your SharePoint sites, your Teams files, your OneDrive content, right? Uh, there's existing permissions that are in place, so that's what it'll go get. There are meeting notes, there's chats, there's collaborative documents, all of that, which is stored in M365. And then there's files that are shared either internally or externally, if those permissions are still active. So what does that mean? Well, Copilot doesn't really invent access, so it just inherits what's already in place. But as an example, I may have access to the accounting department files, although I've never ventured into that area, and I'm not curious enough to go take a look. I have no need for it, but maybe I do have access and I don't know. If I put my Copilot in place and I start asking questions, and it goes to canvas that area, or human resources, or accounting, revenue, salaries, you name it, right? If I inherit, if over the course of 15, 20 years, we've evolved, organically we've grown, there's maybe the corrections were not made properly, and I still have access to some of these files and folders. Well, Copilot will see that, right? So it'll make it obvious that yes, I do have access, and if I were to ask specific questions, I could probably get information that management doesn't want me to have. So that it becomes a little dangerous. So if a user can open and search and discover files today, your AI will do the same thing, right? Just faster and more intelligently, and come back with an answer. But the old shared links, the site permissions, the poor folder hygiene, it becomes visible with any kind of AI tool, specifically if it's being inherited from the previous generations of a migration that you've put in place. And governance work should happen obviously before you implement any kind of large scale or even small scale AI, never after, right? Because after, you're kind of causing the damage and then running to put out the fires. So
Proactive instead of reactive.
yes, exactly. So your Microsoft 365 tenant is the control plane, I guess. It's the panel. It's the main area of focus for the security policies. Um, and I will address the license, because I'm sure we're going to get that Microsoft license question soon. But let me go through this slide and then I'll explain the licensing. Um, First of all, irrelevant of whether I'm talking to you about Copilot or any AI tool, if you do not have multi-factor authenticated within your M365 environment across all users, then you have gaps, you have vulnerabilities, you have holes. These are weak points that can be exploited by cyber criminals. So, let's leave AI on the side and let's just talk security. It is the first thing that you should do within your environment. And the second thing you should do within your environment is block legacy authentication and reduce your weak sign-in paths. So, your password hygiene is extremely important once you're starting to get into this area. If you're running 8 characters still, unfortunately, the recommended length now is 12. It's the complexity has to change as well. Uppercase, lowercase, numbers, characters. Blocking access to failed login attempts. So, we see a lot of times it's unlimited. So obviously, again, vector for attacker, he will just consistently try until he gets in. So a lot of times we recommend things like 5, bad login attempts will block that account. And then there's the parameter of, well, how long will you block the account? 30 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hours. It really depends on what you decide with your MSP on what you think. Obviously, we have recommendations for that, but that's the first thing you need to look at. Or second thing. And then you look at things like conditional access to enforce sign-in requirements for session control, to the ability to contain and fence in your users so that they can log in from a specific geographical area, let's say. So for example, I can log in to my tenant and work from home. I can log in from the office. I can log in anywhere from Canada and anywhere from US. So my conditional access dictates that I am only allowed to connect them to our M365 tenant within North America. Now, if I were to go on vacation or a business trip out in Europe and I want to log into my M365, the policies in place will not allow me to connect. That's because that's what policies were established here. You may have different ones. You may have workers in Europe and all around the world. But again, the conditional access, that's one example. You can run it by device, you can run it by IP, you can run it by different areas. But what that does is it actually limits the amount of outside connections. Again, to reduce the amount of people attempting to get into your environment. The last thing you want is to have to fight with someone who's trying to log in another country when all you simply had to do is put in a policy in place that just completely blocks it and you don't have to worry about it. And very important, along with the conditional access, the ability to audit and view and see all of this activity that is going on, so you can actually have someone take action on whether maybe there is somebody trying to get in, and then you can escalate that to your MSP or security provider, and usually they're monitoring for that, and then they can take action accordingly to ensure that nobody gets into your environment. So some of the policies that should be intentionally set, right? Little exercise: who can share externally and under what conditions. So do you want specific people or specific departments with the ability to take some documents and share them out and send them out to external sources? Are you allowing anonymous links? Is that completely disallowed? Is it are you containing that? I mean, usually anonymous links are things like share to everyone, and then you're sending the link over to someone. So anybody with that link has access to your file or whatever you're sharing, your team site. It's not best practice anymore. So obviously there's a way for you to contain that with different parameters that you see in the next few slides as we go along. What you can do is look at how long links remain active. So a lot of times I see environments where a link is being shared and it's there forever. So it's available to all and it's active full time without a end date. So you can put a parameter that says, shared links that go external can stay alive for 30 days. And on the 31st day, it'll turn off that link. So another measure of security that you can put in place. And then whether or not you allow unmanaged devices to access or download any kind of sensitivity files. And when I talk about unmanaged devices, these are devices that are possibly inside your environment that you're not aware of, that are not enrolled in either your Intune environment, or that is not being managed by your MSP. External sources, clients, partners, people on the outside. You can't manage those devices. So obviously you have to choose whether or not you allow them to see specific information. So again, if I can use an example for us, if I have a Teams call with an internal employee, I'm able to share specific files with this person. But if I were to include my client in this call and then I want to copy paste the file in the chat, it doesn't allow me to do it because my policies say it is an outside source. It's unverified. I can't have you send that file over. So this is a little example of what you can do. So with regards to SharePoint, OneDrive permissions, you have to look at this and do a complete reset, really. And I'm not saying to completely delete your structure and your permissions and your access. I'm just saying that this is a completely different beast. It is not the same as your typical Active Directory or as your Entra ID access to Azure, and what groups and users that you're giving permissions to. The M365 environment, which includes SharePoint, Teams, and the OneDrive, is its own element within that. Unfortunately, in order for you to merge or let it work properly with the entire ecosystem of Microsoft, you have to start looking at first of all, your licensing. So if you're running a Microsoft Business Standard license, unfortunately, a lot of the things that actually all of the things that I will be saying do not or cannot be applied if you're still running a standard license. So you have to look at if you need to venture into that Copilot or AI readiness realm. The first thing that has to be done is your licenses from business standard need to evolve to a business premium at a bare minimum. Okay, so why? Because if you're putting MFA across all the board, obviously you need some kind of premium license to get that done. Unless you have standard and then you run with the P1 add-on, and then standard and P1 doesn't have all the features that some of the premium has. So again, if you want to implement the right DLP solution, permissions, the ability to audit and track conditional access, who does what within your environment, you need to make that jump over to premium. It's actually a major recommendation for a lot of micro-edge locations that they're enforcing all their customers to move to premium as a bare minimum, so we can apply the security and make sure that the risks are drastically reduced instantaneously. So with the conditional access with MFA, that's what you're looking at, right? So you have to review, once that's in place, you have to review your SharePoint sites, your teams, your channels. And the back end of Teams is SharePoint, so it's kind of interrelated. And if you're running business standard, chances are that you may be running the personal OneDrive shares. So your users are saving files on their OneDrive, and then in turn taking some files and sharing it with an external source or with employees. But essentially that personal OneDrive is still a personal OneDrive. It's very hard to audit. It's very hard to enforce any kind of security policies. And moving to premium gives you the ability to switch it to a OneDrive for Business, and now brings it right into your permission structure and your group access and the ability to see what's going on and who's sharing what. The recommendation would be, again, to reduce broader permissions such as everyone or everyone except external users, or large group-based access. Maybe it's not needed, right? Why are you sharing this to everyone? Is there a specific need why the default parameter of everyone shows up? It's things that you should be, or stuff that we recommend that you remove right off the bat. There's an item on cleaning up of orphan folders, overshared links, and the content that was never meant to be collaborative for long term. So orphaned account and orphan folders are things where a specific user had this data, and then maybe the user doesn't exist anymore in your organization. So yeah, you've disabled that user or you've deleted that user within your Active Directory or your Azure or Entra ID. But unfortunately, the files and folders that were created with that user are still there, and the attachment is still there. And then it becomes difficult to manage and control. So, that and the oversharing of links. If I'm sharing with Maria, well, I wouldn't know if Maria would share it to another 10 people. There's ways for you to control that. So you have to decide where the sensitive content should live, who owns it, and what should be off limits by default, and what do you do in the event of I don't have this user anymore in my environment? What are the steps I need to take what are the steps that need to take place for me to ensure that there's no shadow links and anonymous folder, orphan folders, etc. So it's an exercise of identifying the information, right? What sites contain your HR, your finance info, legal, client sensitive data, what folders are currently being shared and never reviewed again, right? So it was done for a one-time thing. set it and forget it. Not a very good concept in this case. And again, that comes from the convenience and force of habit. I guess it's the habit of everybody doing that. So that complete mindset has to completely change for you to be AI ready, but more importantly, to be more data compliant and secure within your an ecosystem. So internal and external sharing need clear guardrails. Like I said, let's say for internal sharing, maybe not every employee should discover every file just because it lives in the same tenant. So that exercise has to go again, looking at my employees, looking at my groups, who has access to what, should they have access to this folder? If they don't need access, you need to contain that and limit it. Using role-based groups and purposeful access instead of default openness, obviously. So traditional, folder gets created, and then we're giving access to specific people or specific departments. Is that the right way? Again, you need to look at the traditional way of giving permissions and access to your files and folders versus the new version of understanding that you have an ecosystem of multiple applications and multiple data sources, and you need to make sure that it's not only a file that is stored on a server that is in this folder anymore. It is a file that has been shared via Teams and then forwarded and then saved in a OneDrive, and now it becomes a little bit more complicated. And again, limit the broad sharing of sensitive business areas, with HR, finance, et cetera, specific, maybe manufacturing, et cetera. And then on the external side, it's a whole different discussion on what is your level of expectation, or what would you allow external sources or external sharing to happen, right? So choose whether is it allowed across the board for all your employees? Is it by a specific site? Is it only for some teams? Is it only for some employees? Do I need to approve the external sharing of something that gets that there's an attempt to share? We can put a permission where there's an approver that allows that to happen. Or and you can add things like expiry dates to your shares. So for example, best practice would be anything that gets shared with any external source, put a 30-day limit on it. And the timer starts once you start to share. And on the 31st day, that link is no longer accessible by any external source. And wherever possible, try and use some kind of authentication method. Like, again, that's why we don't like the sharing to everyone. If you're sharing to a specific user or an external source, there are ways for you to activate some kind of authentication. So that user, that external user, will have to log in with username and password to have access to that file. Again, another way for you to similar to like conditional access, allowing you to put the guardrails around who has access to what. And all of this, again, I'm talking about security, but it falls under the Copilot and AI issue as well, because it will canvas your entire environment and collect whatever it can if you don't contain it properly. So there is a manual exercise that has to be done. I don't know if you had something to say, Maria.
No, I was going to say Copilot is a tool. It can't read it doesn't know any better. It knows what it knows. It knows what it sees. So yeah, you have to give it the guardrails it needs to do its job properly, right?
That's
And
right.
and reduce your risk as well.
Yeah. So where is it? This is an exercise that you have to do, obviously. Where could Copilot find this today, right? Where is it stored? Look in SharePoint, Teams, collected library, OneDrive, email, chats, meeting notes, collaborative documents, everywhere, right?
So many places now.
Yeah,
Information
yeah,
lives in so many different places now. So.
yeah. Who can access it, right? So whoever already has access through the existing site permissions, the file shares, the group access, etc. It warns about we warn about broad permissions, like everyone. That's not good, or everyone except external users. Was it ever shared externally? How do you know if it wasn't shared externally? So the questions come up now. If you think, what, I'm confident, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if my employees actually shared this outside. So how do I know? How can I tell, right? That's the reason why we're talking about this today, is you can put guardrails in place for you to see what's going on and for you to correct and put those security measures in place to avoid it, limit it, etc., or stop it, right? So you need to check, if it's shared externally, etc. Um, and then would you be comfortable if AI surfaced in a broader work context, right? So again, are you sure that AI wouldn't, pick up information that you don't want it to pick up? You have to ask that question because it's really the exercise of um, of your data compliancy has to be done before you implement any kind of AI, unless you're willing to test it with one user who may be the owner or a president, and then can just question the crap out of AI and say, how far can it take me? And then it's another way, but it's really, honestly, it's not the right way to do it. Like the right way is to run your AI readiness assessment to come up with a full evaluation of your tenant, your security. It'll come out with, these are the discrepancies. Here are your gaps. Here are your recommendations. These are the policies you need to put in place. There you go. And, get it done. And you get to put the policies in place. And once that's in place, you're technically ready. And I don't want to use the word certified, but you're technically ready for AI implementation within your environment.
And how many owners do you know that have time to do all this testing?
Right. And it's kind of hard for an owner to test because usually, again, not best
He
practice,
has
but
yeah, they have
usually an
access.
owner has full admin access to the environment, which is not best practice. Not good, right? Because if the owner gets hacked, full access. So again, not the right tester. You'd need to test like specific people that have a little bit more say within the business and that are not necessarily people that have admin access. So that leads to how do we control the data that is going back and forth, right? How do we know which data can be shared? Is there anything we can do to ensure that this type of data does not go to this individual or an external source? Yes, it's called labeling. Obviously, there's sensitivity labels that are attached. So that comes with the Microsoft Purview DLP functionality of the premium E3, E5 licenses. So you may have premium, you may have E3 or E5. There are, depending on the versions of license you have, as you get to E5, you get a bit more advanced features for DLP. But I say this to all our customers: do not go grand scale. Do not jump in a big ocean. You need to start with a little mini pool, one step at a time, 1 foot at a time. And honestly, from just the fact that you're moving from a business standard to a business premium license, that's your first baby step into adding that security, data compliance, and trying to put those guardrails around your data. So, the labeling portion or the sensitivity labels are things like, this folder, this file is considered HR. This is considered financials. So it's a tagging of actual files and folders and environments and sites that allow that help Copilot collect info with regards to that user that is asking for it, and only give that person the information that they have the right to view. So if I do not have the right to see HR files, uh, well, once it canvases Teams and OneDrive and SharePoint and everything else, it may find things that I'm not supposed to know or see. But if you're tagging your files and folders properly and your data, then AI will respect that limitation that it has in place. So, for example, 3 to 5 categories that you can create, finance, public facing, maybe a sensitive content which can't go out. So if I were to grab, if I may have access to this, and there's a difference between having the right to see it versus the right to share it, right? And that's where the sensitivity labels and the DLP functionality works, right? I may have the right to see something, contracts, let's say, as an example, but I won't have the right to share it externally with the customer because I'm not the person in charge of contracts. It's not my responsibility. I should not be sending this contract over to an external source. So the sensitivity labels help with that, specifically when you're putting in Copilot in place. So if I can say, well, I'd like to see all the contracts we have in place, and and then I want this one, and I put it in an email, and I want to explain to the customer that your contract will look similar to this one, but it's not really this one. The DLP will kick in and give me some kind of an alert, or alert the IT team to say, like, this, there's an action that's happening that is not according to the security policies in place, and we stopped it, right? So the goal is not to try and put out the fire, you have to try and avoid the fire, and that's how you do it, right? Um, then there's the no label, right? Because technically, by default, a good percentage of our customers don't have the labeling, the sensitivity labeling, or the tagging in place. Um, will Copilot see it? Is that the next question? I don't remember if that was our next question. Will Copilot see it if the data? I'm going to skip one just to be sure. No. Okay. So if Copilot, if I don't have anything labeled, will Copilot see it? Yes, it will see it. If just because it's unlabeled doesn't mean it's hidden from Copilot. Like I said, it'll canvas through whatever it knows that you have access to and come back to you with information. However, if you categorize it right, and I'm not part of the HR tagging, I will not have access to that. So there's a big importance on the tagging. And you're probably asking, how do I tag? Um, Once you have the premium licenses, once you go into the Microsoft admin console, either in Azure or an M365, there's a security section where you can actually create your tagging, and that's where you implement your conditional access, your MFA, your activation of your data loss prevention features, the restricted locations. What else? Your time limit on sharing your files. It's all within that realm of console where you manage it, and that's where you would manually, and I say manually for a specific reason, because the premium and the E3 licenses, you need to manually tag or label all of your data. If you want, if you have a lot of data, and yes, it is an extensive exercise, depending on how much data you have. But if you want the ability to auto tag or auto label sensitivity labels with your data, you would have to go to an E5 license, because then the automated AI feature kicks in and does a scan of, every new file that I'll create. It'll scan, and there's conditions. It'll scan for specific content and say, oh, I think this is a contract. I will tag it as a contract, or HR, or finance, or something that is labeled there, because this is the criteria that I saw in this file. So now it becomes interesting, but obviously this becomes a little bit larger scale. Companies that have a lot of data, then it could be interesting. But like I said, first steps, getting to that premium, and there's a little bit of legwork on the labeling of stuff. I never said it was going to be easy, but there's a little bit of work that you're going to have to do. I'm
Nothing's
sorry.
easy.
Yeah. Speaking of not being easy, Microsoft Purview and DLP. So yeah, um, I love Microsoft, but they have a habit of making things complicated all the time, and it's okay. We can figure ourselves around, and there's always a way to simplify it, right? So in this case, what's Purview? What's DLP? DLP is data loss prevention. It is embedded inside of a solution called Microsoft Purview, which comes with a small version of it in the premium, and then E3 gets a larger version, and E5 gets the full version. Again, it is a tool that you use to govern the data within your environment. So it is your watchguard, the police. It is the entity that will respect whatever policies you are putting in place with regards to sharing, protecting of the data, what kind of information Copilot will give to that user. And you have to put those sensitivity labels in place. It'll leverage the sensitivity labels and provide with the right information, and then help your M365 ecosystem and all of your users, and ring fence data within your environment, dependent on the policies that you've put in place. So it's very important to have this in place. It is a beast if you really want to get into the full-blown Purview and DLP, but the primary reason for Purview is that to give you the ability to put the security policies in place, those data loss prevention, classification, and some of those features. And the last part there is on the left-hand side is the retention, the audit, the insider risk, the governance, the monitoring of all of that gets done with Purview, and the alerting and the reports and the ability to see what's going on within my environment. Well, such and such a user used Copilot to try and access this info. It wasn't given to them, but this is the activity that happened. Or this user attempted to share a document which was considered sensitive or internal, and we stopped it. But you need to see that, right? Because otherwise, you think you're compliant and everything's good. So that's what hit us by surprise when we did our own evaluation, saying, "Hey, we're IT, we're security focused," and there are a few things that came up that opened our eyes and say, "Okay, we need to fix that immediately." So it's not a checkbox. It again supports the policy decisions that you make, whatever policies you put in place. I spoke about the licensing. Obviously, there needs to be a transition to a minimum of business premium to get that. And even with purview, the permissions and the sharing architecture still matters first. So again, a revisiting of all the infrastructure and make sure that it is set the right way, because purview doesn't do that for you. All it does is it monitors whatever you have in place, right? So let's look at some DLP policies that are pretty useful and current.